Well, hello, good afternoon. It's Friday afternoon. Only a few more days until we hit the holiday weekend. Um, we are so glad to have you out there on LinkedIn and Facebook and YouTube. I'm so excited to have Frank as my guest this afternoon. We met on Clubhouse, I think, and we have collaborated a few times over the last, or I should say several times over the last many months. So just to introduce myself, if you don't know me, I'm Annette Richmond. My company is Career Intelligence, Resume Writing, and Career Services. And I do my LinkedIn Lives and other media under the Smarter Career Moves kind of brand. So Frank, tell us a little bit about your company, who you are, and what you do.
Absolutely. And Annette, it's so great to be here with you again. And so I'm Frank Burgoyne. I'm the founder of YourInterviewSuccess.com. And basically, I help my clients ace their interviews through the use of mock interviews. And yet, my experience just really comes from having been a recruiter for 14 years. So I'm all about interviews.
I know. Well, you do a lot of, work with executives and people in all different areas, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I would say, typically I work with people who probably have about 10 years of experience and more.
Okay. Well, one of the things that drives me crazy. I've often mentioned that I recruited for a couple of years. I certainly don't have the experience that you have. But, I think one of the biggest mistakes that candidates make is they decide that they're going to just go into a job interview and, wing it. They don't do any prep. They don't prepare any answers to questions. They just, you know what, I know my stuff and I'm going to go in there and I am going to just do this great job. Now, I think you'll agree with me based on our conversations that, having preparation, being prepared, is really, really important. I used to ask the clients, potential candidates that I spoke with, if they knew anything about the company. And, what I was not hoping to hear was no, which I heard often. No, I don't know anything. But, occasionally I'd get someone said, oh yeah, I was working for a magazine. I know the magazine, I read it all the time. I'm so excited, to be part of that, etc. And, that would go into my little report that I sent to the client because we were working, contingency. So I think that companies actually overall prefer, or they really like it much better, I should say, more than prefer, if candidates actually know something about the company. So what's some good strategies for candidates to research a company before they go in, maybe as soon as they apply for a job there?
Yeah, Annette, I'm so glad you're bringing up this issue. And it doesn't matter whether you're a recent college grad or you're more at the executive level. You're so right. A lot of times people just, they do so many other things to prepare for the interview, but they spend 5 minutes looking at the homepage of the company. And when it comes to that question that you're going to get, why do you want to work for us? You could potentially bomb the interview. So some things you can do, and what I encourage people, start with the website and really understand the products, the services, the mission. Companies really want to know that you understand their mission and that you're drawn to the mission. And culture is so important today when companies are selecting candidates. And understand a bit about the culture as well, but you got to go way beyond just the website. Another thing you can easily do is Google search the company, read articles about what's being said about that company in the news, because their plans to expand globally, it might not be on their website, but if you're able to articulate that in the interview, they're going to think, wow, this person really knows a lot about us. I really like that, and you have to get inside the head of the person interviewing you. And They're looking for someone who's really enthusiastic and excited about working there and knows something about what they're doing and what makes them different. So, do your Google research, and sure, you can go on Glassdoor and see what's being said about the company. But one thing to know about Glassdoor is it tends to skew negative. Often people who maybe are disgruntled employees or, just didn't have a great experience, they're often the ones they're commenting. So take that with a grain of salt. But I think that's a good starting place for your research.
No, I agree with you. It's far more often. I know that for myself, if I'm having an issue with a company, I'm much more likely to call up and complain than, call up and praise them. I mean, I may praise them if I'm there, but if I'm going to be active about it, it is negative, and so that is certainly something. And I have recommended to clients that I worked with that they can even set up a Google alert for the company, right? So whenever they're doing something, and if you do read something, as you mentioned, like an international expansion or a new product, if you can work that into the interview, right? Even better.
Absolutely, because if you know they're expanding globally for the first time and you've got global experience, maybe in sales, that is going to be a feather in your cap. That's you're making that hiring manager so happy. And it might be things like that that begin to separate you from your competition.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And it's also researching the interviewers. Now there are so many ways, of course, LinkedIn, but the company websites today, a lot of them, because it's a website, there's so many people on that, that are employees there that are all up and have maybe bios and photos and everything. So what's your suggestion, other ideas on how to research people that you're going to be interviewing with, and also, what to look for?
Yeah, that's also a really good point. One of the things I want to start off by saying is that, and this happens a lot with my clients, I'm encouraging them to research the people who are interviewing them on LinkedIn. And often they push back and say, oh, I don't want to do that. I don't want them to see that I'm looking at their profile. I don't want them to think I'm stalking them. And so I really try to help them see that that is not going to be a problem. And in fact, if someone has the time to be checking to see who's looking at their profile, it actually could be a feather in your cap. They could say, oh, that person's checking me out before the interview. That's a good thing. It's not stalking. Now, I don't recommend, going every day and looking at their profile. That might be a little bit of stalking. But just like your research of the company, you want to go beyond that LinkedIn profile. And excuse me, I want to say a little bit more about the LinkedIn profile.
Sure.
Sometimes people just look at the work history, look at what they're posting. What are they commenting on? What groups do they belong to? Really get a sense of perhaps things that they're passionate about. Because again, you may have an opportunity in the interview to talk about something that you kind of notice that they really know a lot about, or they have an idea about. They're a thought leader around some issue. If maybe they're in product management and they're really into agile processes, and they talk about that a lot. Well, then bring up Agile in the interview. So look beyond just the work history, but that's a good starting place. But you can Google that person too, and certainly find out what's being said about them in the news if possible.
Yeah, you might find that maybe they won an award or something that might pop up. And, I recommend to people also that you even go down and look in like the volunteer area. I mean, where they went to college, and, if you went to the same college, that might be something that, just gives you some commonality. And people who volunteer in certain areas. My husband and I are, big dog rescue advocates, and we have volunteered with a dog rescue group for many years. And I have that on my LinkedIn profile, and people do mention it to me. Dogs are kind of kind of a thing of mine. As you can see, actually see behind me here, I love dogs. So, you know, but it is important to look at those things. You know, I think of a lot of the we all know the old, you know, like, and trust. People like to hire, work with whatever, you know, with people that they know, like, and trust. And if you can build up that rapport and have those commonalities and just get the conversation going, you know, I think you can sort of move into that know, like, and trust, you know, fairly, you know, more quickly, you know, more quickly.
No, I absolutely agree. I think, again, you have to kind of overcome that idea that, you know, somehow they're going to feel like you're spying on them. That really isn't the case. And I think they're going to be more impressed that you did do research on them. I would like to feel like someone had researched me and knows a bit about me. You know, I'm president of the board of a nonprofit here in San Francisco. And, you know, it would really kind of flatter me a little bit if someone had really looked through my profile and knew things like that.
Oh, I agree with you. You know, I actually, before I have an appointment with a potential client, someone who's considering working with me, I always go and look at their LinkedIn profile, you know, partly because, you know, I want to see if it needs some work, but, you know, I want to learn a little bit more about them and who they are. And I think that's so much, you know, LinkedIn is so much different than the resume. You know, the resume is more static and it's professional. You know, more formal than the LinkedIn profile, where you really have the opportunity, you know, to show who you are. And if you can find those stories about the interviewers, I think that's, you know, I think that's a great thing. You know, I agree with everything you said. And one of the things, because we, you know, the title of our sort of LinkedIn Live today is, you know, presenting yourself as the best candidate. And part of that, I think I would say a big part of that is showing that you are able to do the job, that you are someone that is coming in there, can hit the ground running, you have that experience. And, you know, as an interview coach, as a recruiter, former recruiter, you know that a lot of interviews are built around these behavioral interview questions. And they start something like, you know, tell me about a time when, you know, whatever. And it's something that's related to, you know, the job that you're going to be doing. You know, they're looking for a story with sort of the beginning, middle, and end, you know, that is going to convey, demonstrate that you are able to do, you know, whatever it is that they're looking for. Now, I know a lot of professionals, career professionals, including me, I think maybe you, sort of advocate for using acronyms, you know, or formulas like STAR and SHARE. And so what's your take on that? And what do you advise your clients? How do you advise them to prep for these behavioral interviews, which can be kind of tricky?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, before I even meet with a client, there is an exercise around their STAR stories. I want them kind of ferreting those out. And, you know, for example, you can create a very simple Excel spreadsheet and have the title perhaps of your stories on the left and the situation action result on the top. And as far as the kinds of stories that you should be flushing out, you want to think about the times in your work past where you really made a difference. So, for example, your idea led to saving the company money, or your idea increased sales, or on the operational side, your idea saved time, or again, saved money. Or just, and then there's kind of the creative ideas. You came up with a creative idea that, you know, led to some kind of a positive change in your company. But you're mining for gold. That's what you're really doing. And these are kind of your gem stories. And, you know, anyone who really spends the time flushing these out is going to have such an advantage over someone who hasn't done it. It's like the difference between if you were walking into a final exam in college and you didn't study versus studying, you know, days before, right?
Yes.
So So you actually have some control over your interview and the outcome when you do this level of preparation.
Oh, that is so true. And thank you for, sharing that what the acronyms are. The STAR is situation, task, action, result. And then share is situation, hindrance, I guess, whatever made it particularly challenging, the action, the result. And what I find interesting too about the N, the E is the evaluate, where you can evaluate what would have happened if you didn't do this, and anything that may have not gone right or something. I learned about that recently from another interview coach. So, but I also like what you talked about with operations, because so many people, they hear that, they hear, oh, I need achievements. Because we all say that you got to have achievements on your resume and your LinkedIn, your interview results, value statements, and it all means the same thing. As you said, the impact that you've had on the employer. And people often think of that as being, well, I didn't generate money. I'm not in sales. I didn't, increase the market share because I'm not in sales or market business development. But the whole idea with operations, there are so many things there that people do that's so valuable that they just don't recognize. You mentioned saving time, and I think of that as someone who maybe works in accounting, and the person, they redesigned the process to do the expense reports. So instead of I did those once many years ago in one of my jobs. And if it, instead of it taking that person 5 days a month, maybe it's 2 days a month. So, it's the things like that, right? I mean, what other things
Right.
besides, would you suggest that people look for when if they are in one of those operational type positions?
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up the accountant role, because that isn't my normal wheelhouse of who I
Mhm.
help. I have helped accountants through the years, and they probably have the worst time trying to really develop those success stories. And sometimes you have to kind of pivot a little bit, and maybe there was a really, really tight deadline that you had to work under, or you had two stakeholders wanting ridiculous things done, and you had two things to be managing and both had tight deadlines.
Absolutely.
That's a great story. And it's so easy to kind of say, oh, I don't have any success stories. But really look at your resume, and it takes time. And you want to really look at each job on that resume and let yourself kind of just think back, all the kinds of things you were doing, and you will eventually land on, successes. And the other problem I think some people have is they know their successes, but they don't feel they're enough. And there's
Yes.
kind of an imposter syndrome around them. But what I tell my clients is work with what you've got. Really think about what are all the details that you did, because that's the part. You've got the situation and the task, but the actions. Take me through specifically how you accomplish that goal. And that's where you may be rusty. You may be kind of forgetting that. So you really want to make sure that you're, giving yourself enough time. That's why I don't prep the night before an interview. An important interview.
No.
You gotta start, at least a week before or more. So it takes time, but you're going to find yourself walking in with that energy and confidence that maybe was missing when you were kind of not doing so well in your interviews. That's going to make a difference.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. It's a lot of it has to do with the confidence. And the clients that I work with, I work with them primarily on their resumes, a little bit of interview coaching here and there. And one of the things that I sort of force them to do is to go back and look at their career and look at these, the achievements that they have. And often, many of them come back to me and they say, oh, it was kind of a rough assignment, but now that I see what I've done, it makes me feel so much more confident in my abilities. And it is so true. Often people just don't recognize the things that they do. And you mentioned, working for two people. I put myself through college working in different various accounting type roles. And, I remember having to work for like two partners and having to juggle the duties and appease everybody. And, if you can do that, it's very, very powerful. I worked with a client who always stands out in my mind, who works kind of in entertainment and programming. And one of the things that the client shared with me was the fact that they had to go in and sort of, control this unruly celebrity who they had as a guest. And if you can do that, anything that you do, it's all about the difference that it was that you were there instead of somebody else, right? I mean, that's what you really want to show.
Absolutely. And the other thing is this STAR approach, and again, that situation, task, action, result. You can use that when you get it. Like, let's say you get a question about, have you used a particular software? Now, typically, and I've seen candidates do it as a recruiter, they might say, no, I really don't have that software. Well, that's not the way to answer that question. What you want to say is, I haven't had the opportunity to use that software, but I learned software really quickly. Let me tell you about a time when I learned a software quickly, and it's Python. And then go through a story of the steps you took and, how you accomplished that. And then, it's probably not a deal breaker that you have that software, but the fact that you told them this story about how quickly you can learn something, you're probably going to get a pass. So,
Yes.
That ability to tell stories, it kind of comes in handy throughout the interview for a lot of different kinds of questions.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's all about the stories. And, this is, not the behavioral interview. And, I love the examples that you've given, but I just actually heard someone, and I'm so bad, I always mention that it's not my idea, but I often don't remember. I saw somebody actually on TikTok talking about job interviews. And they were saying the story of providing your greatest weakness, because, there are a lot of interviewers that they ask the same questions: greatest weakness, strength, where you're going to be in 5 years, etc. And, what they said was, and I'm interested to hear what you say, and maybe you already advise your clients. What they said was, if somebody asked you what was your greatest weakness, that you might say something like, well, my greatest weakness was my fear of public speaking, but I have, addressed that over the years, and now I'm comfortable, rather than putting it. And I thought that was interesting, because I have mentioned before to, you can name something you're not that great at, that you're working on, or that's not critical, to the job. But I thought that was really interesting to say my greatest weakness was, and this is what I did. So what's your take on that?
Yeah, I'm on the same page with you. What I recommend, the verbiage I even recommend, is earlier in my career, I had an issue with, and I took these steps, and, I still get a little nervous when I do a presentation, but I use that nervousness to my advantage, and actually I've gotten a lot of great feedback on my presentations. So I agree. And one thing I want to say about the weakness question, often when clients come to me and we're taking that question, I like to hear how they answer it before I give them any coaching on it. Mm-hmm. Often it's like, I'm a workaholic. You don't want to do that, because it sounds really insincere. It sounds like you're trying to turn that into a strength, and that's going to bomb for you. So they're not trying to hire perfect people. Part of emotional intelligence is knowing where your weaknesses are and working on them. So if you throw out perfectionist or workaholic, it's not going to sound very emotionally intelligent, to be honest.
Yeah, because it really is kind of phony, right? I mean, that's what we would get. Those are the kinds of things that I was advised to do like 20 years ago, early in my career. Well, just, say I'm a workaholic perfectionist, something that people are going to go, oh, well, that's a good thing. And it's just so, those pat answers are just, they just don't work. I mean, people want to hire people, not people who have memorized lines, which kind of go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So that kind of brings me to my next question. And I know that from us speaking that you're not a big fan of people sort of rehearsing, their answers. I like to think of that process as someone explained it to me, like an athlete who is actually, LeBron James, who's at practice and doing those 3-point shots over and over again. So when it's in the middle of a game and the heat is up and the game maybe is on the line, that they're able to just do it. It's kind of muscle memory. So I think of that as being, part of that whole preparation. But again, not advocating the, line by line, but how do you, advise your clients to prepare,
Yeah, that's a great question. And I do advocate practicing. And I also highly recommend people considering hiring a professional and doing a mock interview so that you really get practice that's more real. But the thing I want to clarify what I don't like it when people write out their entire answer, like to tell me about yourself, and then start reading it during the interview.
Oh.
And that's a crutch that isn't going to work for you, because even though you think you're getting away with it in a video interview, believe me, you're not, because you're looking at it and you're breaking that eye contact. That's really critical in a video interview since you're not in person. So, that by all means, practice tell me about yourself at home or with an interview coach, but avoid memorizing it and writing it all down and then being tempted to read the entire answer. Because what happens is you're going to get questions that you're never going to be fully prepared to handle every single question in an interview. There's always going to be a curveball. Always going to be a curveball. And if you got used to that cheat sheet, you may really have a problem with that. So that's why this STAR method is so great, because it gives you a structure of how to answer so many questions. And when you know all your success stories, chances are you can grab onto one of those for almost any question. So definitely prepare. You're going to get tell me about yourself or take me through your resume. Guaranteed. You're going to get why do you want to make a change? You're going to get why do you want to work for us? What's your salary expectation? Totally prepare for those. But then you're going to get a curveball like tell me about tell me. I mentioned this one on Clubhouse recently, and I've heard it from more than one person. If after 3 months we hire you and it's not working out, why is that going to be? So, those curveballs can come, and you want to kind of be able to think on your feet.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's just part of it. So I'd like to touch on a couple of the questions that you mentioned. And one is the, tell me about yourself. And, as a recruiter, I'm sure you've heard it. I've heard stories like this. I've heard them from clients I've worked with. People start, tell me about yourself. They're like, well, I was in college and I really fell in love with English back then. And I wanted to be a writer. And then I became one and I did this. And it's just like, the interviewer, the eyes are glazing over. And, you have to, you have to have kind of maybe a plan to tell that. So what would be your advice on putting together a response to that question, which it's true. Not everyone, almost everyone asks that.
First, I want to clarify by saying, just like there are so many different ways to write a resume and resume formats, there are equally many different ways to do tell me about yourself, and there are many good ways to do it. But some of my philosophy about it is I highly recommend starting when you begin to talk about your work, you want to start where you are now and move back. A lot of people who have 10, 20 years of experience start off with talking about college. We're not interviewing you today to hear about your experience 20 years ago. Chances are the job you're in now and a couple before are the ones that are making you highly qualified for this. So make it easy. So real easy. Start off with a thank you. Don't just go into your tell me about yourself. Thank you so much for the interview today. Say a little something about the company, not a full-on answer why you want to work there, but I'm just really excited to be talking to Google today. Blah blah blah. Just a little something. And then most recently, you can give a high-level overview of your career, but keep it short. And never say, as you see on my resume. And so many people say that. And what you're saying, the subtext of that is, I don't really feel like I need to talk about myself. There it is in front of you. Look at it. And, obviously you don't want to put that forth.
No.
So,
absolutely not. Absolutely not. So another question, and I have heard this from clients that I work with, and the why do you want to leave? And I have actually will never forget working with a client doing some interview strategy prep, and she started telling me with for why she wants to leave. Well, I've been there for a long time. And when I was hired, they promised me they were going to give me professional development, but it never came through. And I was like, no, you cannot say that. And, it doesn't matter. Your boss could be the devil. You can't say that during a job interview. I mean, you can't say that. So what's your advice on how to approach that?
Yeah, and here's the deal about interviews. There's a way in which you need to learn how to play the game. An interview isn't a place to always, be completely transparent about what's going on in your job. So what I recommend to my clients is when you're asked why you want to leave your job, don't answer that question immediately. Start off by being very positive. So let's say you're working at Facebook. And they're saying, why do you want to leave Facebook? I mean, everyone wants to work there. You can say Facebook, first of all, Facebook's been a fantastic opportunity. I've been there 7 years. I've had 3 different positions. I've learned X, Y, and Z. And honestly, I wasn't really looking right now, but when your recruiter reached out to me and I saw the scope of this role and how well it connected to my background, I started to get very excited about that. And that's, it really, fits my skills really well. And that's your answer. Now, if you applied on your own, you can pivot by saying something like, hey, this was a great company, XYZ. However, when I think about the next step in my career, I really want to focus on this, this, and this. And that's why this opportunity is so exciting to me. And that's your answer. Don't say, sometimes people want to say, well, I wasn't challenged enough here. And that's not a good thing to say, because in their mind, they're thinking, why didn't you create those challenges there? So that's a sand trap. And of course, saying you didn't get along with your manager, that's another sand trap. So you don't have to reveal everything.
Yeah.
You want to be strategic.
And and avoid the negativity. I mean, for one thing, the company may figure, okay, when it's time for that you're going to leave them, what are you going to say about them? And
exactly.
if you are this kind of whiner or complainer, who wants to work with that person, right? I mean, nobody wants to bring somebody like that onto the team that's working really well together. And, I want to talk about something that you and I actually have discussed before. The whole idea of building confidence with kind of like the power poses. And, I remember a few seasons ago on Grey's Anatomy, obviously I watch Grey's. And there was, a surgeon. They were getting ready for this risky surgery, and one of them is just standing there in kind of the Superman pose, and another one comes in, and she says, "Okay, we're going to stand like this for 2 minutes, and it's going to build our confidence." And I was curious, like, is this a real thing or is this a TV thing? And I Googled it, and I found that it was Amy Cuddy, well-known, highly regarded person, and she actually has a TED Talk. And in part of it, she actually talks about doing these power poses not during job interviews, of course. Okay, not that, but beforehand to, build your confidence. And you shared with me that you actually kind of, advocate for that as well. So tell me a little bit about how you coach your clients, and you had a few other different ideas as well.
Yeah, and I want to just kind of say that particularly some of my clients, their biggest issue is nervousness and anxiety. And, we all have those butterflies going into an interview, and that's normal. But then there are people who have kind of extreme versions of that where it really affects their interview performance. So for people like that, power poses can be a great tool. And, you want to do those before your interview. And it's really pretty simple, not to go into a whole thing about it, but, find a pose that's powerful to you. Like for me, my power pose is kind of, arms up here, kind of the hero pose. And you want to say things out loud in a very declarative way about what you are bringing to this interview. So, I am confident about the skills that I'm bringing and how well they match the needs of this position. I am going to be confident in the interview. So even if you're not feeling those things, that's the point of the affirmation. You may say, I don't feel that way. Well, that's why you need to do them.
Yeah, but the body does influence the mind though, too.
Absolutely. And, for other people, and actually almost all my clients, I recommend get your exercise in early in the morning before the interview, because it's going to I always did that through the years when I was interviewing. I would always go to the gym very early before the interview, and it gets those endorphins going, and endorphins make you feel good. You want to feel good going into your interview. And if you're not a gym person or a jogger, go out for a brisk walk. Anyone can do that. And I also find putting on great music, music that really makes you feel happy. That can be a great thing to do before an interview also.
Yeah.
So find something that works for you. Some people are going to feel funny doing a power pose, and I understand that. So do something else.
But the thing is too, if you're doing it home and in your home, nobody's going to see you but you.
Oh.
So, you have to think about it that way. And as we're talking about, confidence and people being nervous, and it comes to mind that most often today people are going to be doing several video interviews. Some might just be an automated, a system where you're asked questions and you are just responding and there isn't anybody there. But,
Yeah.
As you move on, you would be interacting with someone. And a lot of people are so nervous about being on video. And, they started doing this when I was recruiting. It was over a decade ago. And they were all ready, even for local candidates, because it's so much easier for everyone, for the hiring manager, rather than booking the conference room and, all that other stuff. And what's your advice, beyond, I like to dance around. It kind of, gets me going too. But what's your advice for, candidates when they're getting ready to do these video interviews, where they're going to be, I guess, talking to a machine, and then also if they're talking to a person?
Yeah, I think that similar things you want to do for the video interview that you're going to do for any interview. You want to really make sure you're prepared. because again, that's going to make you feel more confident. One of the things you want to do though is get your camera set up a couple days before the interview. Usually the company's going to send you a link, and it's going to be a particular video software. It might be Zoom, it might not be. So you may want to do a little tutorial on their video software. It may be something you've never used before, but the last thing you want is to start your interview with technical problems.
Yeah.
So check out your lighting. Lighting's very important. And often I recommend my clients put a lamp behind their laptop. That seems to give you good light. If you don't have one of those circular lights, put a lamp behind it. That's going to give you some extra light. You don't want it to be dark. You also don't want a lot of glare from windows. You'll notice my shades are pulled down right now because there's a lot of sunshine. And and what you wear can really affect how you feel. So, make sure you're wearing something that you feel terrific in. Whether you're a man or a woman, you want to, and go out and get a new outfit if that's what it takes, but just wear something that's comfortable and that you really, really like, and that you look good in, and that's a color that you look good in. So, and look at your background. You of course don't want a messy house. You can use a virtual background, but use a simple one. Don't use the one with the waterfall. That's going to be really distracting. And, they have some great virtual backgrounds that are just kind of like simple offices.
Yeah.
Things like that work best. Or a bookcase behind you. Yeah.
It's funny that you mentioned that. I'm on the board of a resume writing organization, and we have, our board meetings are always virtual because we're in all different parts of the country. And there's a couple of people on there that are always having like the space behind them, the outer space, and it's really distracting when you're looking at something like that. And you certainly don't want to do that. I will mention somebody I spoke with, another interview coach, I think it was a year ago, mentioned that they had a client who actually created a virtual background with the company logo on it. Let's say it's Diageo. I mention them a lot because they're local to me, their headquarters. And they had a virtual background created with like the Diageo, the logo of the company, and maybe the tagline. And it worked really well for them. So what's your thoughts on creating something like that?
Yeah, I think that's wonderful if you can do that or hire someone to create that for you. Absolutely. For some reason I have a Mac Air laptop, and for some reason you can't do virtual backgrounds on it without a green screen. So, I've been a little challenged, but this sounds funny, but you can actually go on Amazon and you can buy these gigantic plastic sheets that are virtual backgrounds, and they work pretty well. They have like bookcases.
Okay.
And you can tape them up on the wall, and they look darn good, and they're about $15.
So that's kind of like you go to a photographer's studio and they have the white, you could just have that virtual background behind you.
You can, yeah. If for some reason your computer, like mine, doesn't seem to allow a virtual background, yeah, you can do that. But you definitely, you don't, if you've got a really messy background, it's just not going to be a great impression.
Yeah.
And if your only alternative is to have a blank wall behind you, that's better than having a messy background.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually
all have perfect backgrounds,
Yeah. It's interesting. I like virtual backgrounds. I use them all the time. I do particularly like them for the LinkedIn Live. I don't have it today. It's something that's not working right for me, but I actually stopped using them when I'm working with clients because I had read, someone shared an article with me where when people do see the virtual background, when you're working one-on-one with them, that it brings down that trust level. So, I decided to move from, which is why actually the the pictures that I have behind me now, which I adore them. I love them. It just was as I see myself on video and I see them behind me, it always makes me smile. But I kind of converted those one-on-one to not use the virtual background for, for that reason. So, I just thought it was really interesting. That's the blessing of having like a community of people that that they share things with you. So I'm sorry, what were you going to say?
Well, and I actually, I don't encourage my clients to use virtual backgrounds because there is something a little warmer about a real home background, as long as it's decent. But use the virtual background if you're, if the only room that's quiet in your house is a bedroom and it's a mess, and use a virtual background, definitely.
So I just like to ask you, we're getting sort of, towards the end of our time together, but I'd like to just get some input because people often face, they're going to interviews where it's like a panel. I know I've been to those myself. If you're one-on-one, you're focusing on the interviewer. But if you're there and say you have a panel of maybe 3 or 4 or 5 people, how do you sort of work that, audience, if you will, if you're there interviewing in a situation like that?
And are you speaking of in person or?
Yes, in person. If you're at that point where you're like one of the top people and you are brought in person.
Yeah, that's a great question. What I recommend is the person. Well, here's the deal with panel interviews. The person who's asked you the question probably should get most of your eye contact, but then you want to go during your answer. You still want to bring those others in. You want to go like this, this, but then back to the person asking the question. But you don't want to just look at that person. You still want to kind of let everyone else and be, pulling in their eye contact as well. That's my little tip for panels. The other little tip for a panel, sometimes when we walk in, it's happened to me. You've got 5 people, they've introduced themselves, and my mind goes blank. And I don't remember any name. And I've come up with a little tip that can help if you can do it. I would have a sheet of paper with circles on it, kind of representing, a panel. And just quickly, I would, I can pretty easily maintain my eye contact and just jot first names down. I put it in each circle on that piece of paper, and then I kind of have that there as a crutch because it is kind of easy sometimes. Usually I can remember one person's name, but when 5 people have introduced themselves and I wasn't given the names before, that's a little hack that might help.
Yeah, and I have read that the sound that we all love the most is the sound of our own name. I've read that someplace. I've heard it.
So true.
And we do want people to know who we are. So we have covered a lot here. Do you have an area of something that you'd like for us to talk about that I haven't asked you and I haven't brought up? Is there something that you'd like to discuss? Share with us?
I think people often are unsure of how to handle the "what is your salary expectation" question.
Oh, yes, good one.
And I think we could really help our viewers by talking about that a little
bit. Go for it.
Yeah. So I think we often, just like why do you want to leave your job? Our first impulse might be to say, "Oh, my boss," and blah, 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 blah. And sometimes our impulse with salary expectation is throw a number out immediately. And I don't recommend that. What I recommend is saying something like, salary is not my number one consideration right now. I'm looking to work at a great company where I know I can make a strong contribution. Can you tell me what the range is? And then hopefully they're going to give you the range, and don't be afraid to pick up the top number of that range. So if they say the range is probably about 130 to 150, you may want to consider, instead of just saying, oh, okay, that sounds good. If you say, okay, that's good, your offer may end up on the lower part of that range because you've kind of tacitly agreed to that entire range. But another way might be to simply say 150, the top of the range. 150 is a potential starting place if we both agree I'm right for this role. And then, at least they're getting an idea of where you see yourself. Now, they may say to you, 150 is, we're not starting someone there. I just want to let you know, are you flexible? And you can say, I'm flexible depending on the total compensation package.
Yeah.
But then you'll have that recruiter, and often it's an agency recruiter, says, listen, I need a number from you. I can't move forward. I can't present you to the client unless I know what you're looking for. And I'm not telling you the range. I need a number. Well, be prepared to give a number you can live with, because that might be the number you get.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree with you. I agree with you. And I was just talking to two recruiters yesterday on Clubhouse, actually, and we're talking about salary negotiation and the idea of, I haven't heard that before, that saying that, well, 150, is a good place to start. That's interesting. So because and people also sometimes think that recruiters are like, oh, they're just mean. They want to know. So they ask you the salary. I mean, they have the salary. They're given the salary. And if you are, if the salary is, 175 to 200, or let's say 150 to 175, and you want two and a quarter, you're probably not getting that. I mean, it's just people, no matter how great you are, unless you're, I don't know, a celebrity walking in or something, you're just not going to get something that's that much over the top of their,
Right.
range. So
Right.
let's talk a little bit about salary negotiation now. I have read that I read recently, SHRM had a survey, and it said that 90% of employers to that particular survey said that they would be, flexible on negotiating salary. And I've read others, and in most of them, it's the majority of employers are ready to negotiate, or recruiters are ready to negotiate, but people hardly ever. I mean, I never did. I left money on the table all the time, stupidly. But so what's your advice on salary negotiation, kind of how to approach that?
Yeah. So I will tell you that almost 100% of offers are negotiable. And the reason I know that is, as a recruiter, typically when we're getting ready to typically the recruiter makes the offer. Not always. But so before that happens, the recruiter is talking to the hiring manager. And normally what happens is the hiring manager will say to that recruiter, what does that person want? And that's why the recruiter asks you in that first meeting what you want, because we need to know that. So the hiring manager then says, okay, let's give them that, but go up to this number if you have to. So there's usually wiggle room on almost any offer. And if you don't try to negotiate, chances are you're leaving money on the table.
Yeah. One of the last positions I held, I was so excited to get the job. I was just moving into nonprofit after I got a master's in psych, which is how I ended up in the career field. And I was so excited to get the job. I was like, okay, great, thank you. And I was talking to someone else in a similar position. It was a small office, who said, oh yeah, they offered me that too. And I said, no, I want this. And they gave it to them. And I was like, it taught me a good lesson. So we are at the end of our time together, and time flies by. I am so grateful. Thank you so much for saying yes.
I really enjoyed our conversation.
So I know that you have a lot of resources that people can, if they're looking for a job, interview help. Why don't you tell us a little bit about, the resources that you have, and anything that you're doing on an ongoing basis, because, we have some people here watching live, but a lot of people will be watching, on a replay.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, again, my web address is yourinterviewsuccess.com, and you can easily find me on Instagram just under my name. And in the bio on Instagram, there's a link you can click to. There's a free ebook I offer with some interview hacks for 2021. You can also set up a free consultation with me, and we can really go more in depth on your situation. So I encourage you to do that as well. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm always, I'm very open to connect with just about anybody. And yeah, I actually don't have any upcoming, Clubhouse events coming, but I'm often in Clubhouse in career-related rooms, so you can kind of find me there as well. And yeah, I just, I would love to have a conversation with you if you're at all out there in the job market or you're getting ready for interviews. That's my passion. I love to help people. So it's been great being here today with you again, Annette.
Well, that's great. So yes, do connect with Frank on LinkedIn. Follow him on Clubhouse, Instagram, and I will tell you, when he moderates with me, I learn something new every time. So thank you so much for being here today. If you're watching us on the replay, please do comment, and I will be sure to respond to you. Have a great rest of your day and a wonderful, wonderful